G'day guys, Max here from Evidence-Based Football Manager. Hope you're all having wonderful holidays wherever you are in the world. Today we're going to talk about 10 different factors in FM23 that may or may not affect the rate of player growth in the game. The 10 factors that I'll be talking about today are determination, ambition, professionalism, natural fitness, the quality of the coaching staff, the quality of the training facilities, training intensity, league reputation, whether a player is loaned out or not, and lastly, whether a player is playing in an active or an inactive league. According to the tests that I'm going to show you today, 8 out of these 10 factors affect player growth in the game, and 2 of them don't. So try making a guess. Which 2 of these factors do you reckon have no impact on player growth in FM23? Okay, if you've all made your guesses, then I guess we'll get started. For all of my experiments, I'm using my very own custom-made league called the Test League. I've uploaded the editor file and the save file on my Dropbox folder, so feel free to check them out yourselves if you wanted to do so. Also, for each of these 10 experiments, I'm going to briefly display the detailed test setup on the screen, so feel free to pause the video if you wanted to read the experiment details. Okay, I'm going to start with the first 3 factors: determination, ambition, and professionalism. The setup for this test is pretty straightforward. I just use the editor to change the attributes of the players: determination, ambition, and professionalism, all the way from 1 out of 20 to 20 out of 20. And let's go straight to the results. I have 2 line graphs here, each with 7 different lines. The one on the left is for outfield players, and the one on the right is for goalkeepers. The horizontal line represents the age of players at the start of the season during the experiments, all the way from 15 to 30 years of age. And the vertical axis represents the growth in CA rating of these players throughout the season. The black lines in both graphs represent the control group when the players had 10 out of 20 determination, ambition, and professionalism. So if you have a look at the graph for outfield players, you can see that the greatest amount of growth was observed when the players had 20 professionalism, as represented by the purple line here. When players had 20 ambition or 20 determination, the rates of growth are pretty much the same as the control group. When players had 1 ambition or 1 determination, the rates of growth, they dropped a fair bit compared to the control group, as you can see from these 2 lines. The biggest drop in the rate of growth was observed when players had 1 professionalism, as you can see from this green line here. So according to this graph, professionalism is the attribute that affects player growth the most in FM23. With determination and ambition, they definitely do affect the rate of growth, but around 10 out of 20 is where that effect kind of caps out. And higher values in determination or ambition above 10 out of 20 do not seem to boost a player's growth any further. And let's have a look at the graph for goalkeepers. Now you can see that these lines for goalkeepers are a little bit funkier compared to the previous graph for outfield players. This is because the sample size for goalkeepers in my experiments is relatively small compared to outfield players. I've mentioned this in my previous video, but for my experiments, there's 1 goalkeeper for every 10 outfield players. So of course, the sample size for goalkeepers is a lot smaller compared to outfield players, which does lead to a bit of statistical noise, as you can see from these lines, but it's still good enough to provide the information that we're looking for. So here again, the black line is the control group when the goalkeepers had 10 determination, ambition, and professionalism. You can see the greatest amount of growth was observed when players had either 20 professionalism or 20 ambition. 20 determination, on the other hand, doesn't seem to raise the amount of growth any more than the control group. When players had 1 determination or 1 ambition, the rate of growth they dropped a fair bit compared to the control group. The biggest drop in the amount of growth was observed when goalkeepers had 1 professionalism, as represented by the green line here. So the pattern of growth shown by these lines is pretty similar to the graph for outfield players. Professionalism is the factor that's the most decisive for the growth of goalkeepers. With determination, 20 out of 20 was not any better than the control group when the goalkeepers had 10 out of 20 determination, which is something that was also observed for outfield players. With ambition, 20 out of 20 rating did boost the amount of growth more than the control group, which is different from how it was for outfield players. Remember, for outfield players, 20 out of 20 ambition was not better than 10 out of 20 ambition, but for goalkeepers, 20 out of 20 ambition was definitely more beneficial for growth for goalkeepers compared to 10 out of 20 ambition. You know what? In case you guys are confused, I have created a table for you down here to sort of summarize all these findings. So do pause the video and have a read if you wanted to do so. Okay, let's move on and have a look at natural fitness, which is one of the physical attributes of players in Football Manager. According to the in-game description, natural fitness is an attribute that governs how fast players decline when they reach the latter stages of their career. So let's find out whether this is true or not. I tried varying the natural fitness values of players in the test league all the way from 1 out of 20 to 20 out of 20, and I recorded their growth from the age of 15 to 39. Again, I have two graphs here. The one on the left is for outfield players and the one on the right is for goalkeepers. There are 3 lines in each graph representing 3 different scenarios when the natural fitness attributes of players were set as either 1 out of 20, 10 out of 20, or 20 out of 20. So as you can see from both of these graphs, there is negligible difference in the rate of growth when players had different values of natural fitness. Even players past the age of 30 declined at around the same rate, regardless of their natural fitness attribute. I was under the impression that a player with high natural fitness would hold on to their CA rating for a longer period when they go past the age of 30, but these two graphs suggest otherwise. Actually, okay, if you have a look at the graph for goalkeepers, goalkeepers past the age of 38 did drop their CA rating a lot more when their natural fitness was set as 1 out of 20, compared to when it was set as either 10 out of 20 or 20 out of 20. So this is pretty interesting. This could actually mean that the natural fitness attribute is effective only for goalkeepers past the age of 38. Do you think this is something that's intended by the developers, or do you think it's like an unintended error in the game mechanics? I honestly don't know. But you know what? Who cares about players older than 38 anyways? I don't think I've ever had any player older than 31 playing Football Manager. So if there's any game mechanic that's only relevant for players older than 38, then yeah, whatever. I don't think I really care. Well, let's move on to the 5th topic for today. Does the quality of the coaching staff affect player growth in FM23? For this experiment, I changed the attributes of the coaching staff of the 4 teams in the test league to either 1 out of 20, 10 out of 20, or 20 out of 20, and I recorded the growth of the players over the season. I distributed the coaching assignments of all 4 teams manually, as you can see on the screen right now. So the reason I had to distribute these assignments manually is to make sure that all aspects of training are evenly covered by the coaching staff for all 4 teams in the test league. And these are the results. I think the verdict is clear. Player growth is affected by the quality of the coaching staff in FM23 for both outfield players and goalkeepers. As you can see from these 2 graphs, the amount of growth is the highest when the staff attributes were set as 20 out of 20. The amount of growth was a little bit less when the coaching attributes were set as 10 out of 20, and the amount of growth was the lowest when the staff attributes were set as 1 out of 20. So fellow managers, when you're playing FM23, make sure that you always hire the best coaching staff that you can afford for your club, and you will be rewarded with players that show good growth. Okay, next topic, topic number 6. Does the quality of the training facilities affect player growth in FM23? Straightforward setup again for this experiment. I set up 3 scenarios where the level of training facilities were set as either 1 out of 20, 10 out of 20, or 20 out of 20, and I recorded the amount of player growth throughout the season. All the other variables were held constant. It's just the quality of the training facilities that I varied between the three scenarios. And here are the results. Clear verdict again, I think. The quality of the training facilities does affect player growth in FM23. As you can see from both of these graphs, players showed the most amount of growth when club facilities were set as 20 out of 20. The players grew a bit less when the facilities were set as 10 out of 20, and the amount of growth was the lowest when the facilities were set as 1 out of 20. With goalkeepers, the distinction between these three lines is not as clear as they are for outfield players, but you can still kind of see that growth is the highest when the facilities were set as 20 out of 20, and it's the lowest when the facilities were set as 1 out of 20. So yeah, guys, make sure that you always maintain top quality training facilities at the club that you're managing. Alright, straight on to topic number 7, training intensity. Do players grow more when their training intensity is set as more intense? Let's find out. Again, 3 different scenarios. The first scenario is the default training intensity that you can see on the screen right now. The second scenario is when the training intensity was set as extra slack, as you can see here. So players are either doing half intensity training or no training at all. And the third scenario is when training is extra intense. So as you can see here, the players are either doing normal or double intensity training most of the time. And here are the results. Again, I have 2 line graphs, one for outfield players and one for goalkeepers. You can see from the graph for outfield players that the amount of growth was the highest when training intensity was set as extra intense, and the amount of growth was the lowest when training intensity was set as extra slack, which proves that training intensity does have an impact on the growth of outfield players in FM23. If you have a look at the graph for goalkeepers, there's not much difference between the 3 different training intensities. This could be due to the small sample size for goalkeepers, as I mentioned earlier, or it could actually mean that the growth of goalkeepers is not affected by training intensity in FM23. I can't say for sure why the growth of goalkeepers, why it was not affected by training intensity. Okay, moving on to topic number 8. Does league reputation matter? i.e., does a player in FM23 grow more when they're playing in a league with higher reputation? Let's find out. Straightforward test setup again. I just changed the reputation of the league to either 1 out of 200, 100 out of 200, or 200 out of 200, and I recorded the growth of players over the season. And these are the results. The one on the left is for outfield players and the one on the right is for goalkeepers. You can see quite clearly here that league reputation does affect player growth. Players showed the most amount of growth when league reputation was set as 200, and the least amount of growth was observed when league reputation was set as 1 out of 200. I guess an implication here is regarding the choice of club to loan out your youngsters. If you're trying to develop a youngster by loaning him out, choose a club that's in a league with a high reputation, and that will lead to the most amount of growth for the player being loaned out. Alright, topic number 9. Does it matter that a player is loaned out? i.e., do players grow faster or slower when they are loaned to a different club? Let's find out. So this is how I set up this experiment. Remember, there were 4 teams in my test league, team A, B, C, and D. The players from these 4 teams were loaned to each other in like a cyclic manner. For example, team A players were loaned to team B players were loaned to team C, and so on in a circular manner. The loan contract for these players included being able to play against the parent team. The loan can't be terminated or recalled, so that prevents all these players from returning to their own clubs midway through the season. And here are the results. This graph is for outfield players, this graph is for goalkeepers. No difference in the rate of player growth between the 2 scenarios. So whether a player is loaned out or playing for the parent club, it doesn't matter. The amount of growth is the same for both outfield players and for goalkeepers. Okay, finally, the last topic for today. Does it matter whether a player is playing for a league that is set as either view only or inactive? This is how I set up this experiment. The first scenario is when the league was set as active. For this scenario, I didn't need to run any new experiments because I just used the control data that I've been using all this time for all of my previous experiments. So this is the default scenario when the 4 teams in the test league are playing the league matches as per normal without changing any variables. So this represents the first scenario when the test league was set as an active league. The second scenario is when the test league was set as inactive. For this scenario, what I did was I started a new career mode save with only the Welsh league loaded and set as a playable league. The reason I loaded the Welsh league is because you have to have at least one league set as playable when you start a new career mode save in FM23. So with this setup, when I search the 4 teams in the test league, in the search bar, they do come up in the search results. And as you can see here, the players all exist, but there's a lot of information that's unavailable because the league is not loaded. For example, if you have a look at the league schedule, it's not available. And also, if you go into the individual teams, and if you have a look at the staff page, there's no coaching staff available for all 4 teams in the test league. The third scenario is when the test league was loaded at the start of the save, but it was set as view only. So if you set a league as view only, again the league and the test teams will come up in the search results, and the players all exist within the 4 teams of the test league. But again, there's a lot of information that's missing, just like the second scenario when the league was not loaded at all. And let's have a look at the results. So for outfield players, the amount of growth was the highest when the league was set as inactive. The amount of growth was a little bit less when the league was set as view only. And the amount of growth was the lowest when the league was set as active. For goalkeepers, the amount of growth was the highest when the league was set as inactive, just like it was for outfield players. But the amount of growth was pretty similar when the league was set as either active or as view only. Okay, so this is a rather surprising result. Players in FM23 seem to grow faster when they are part of a league that's set as either inactive or view only. This is interesting because recently when FM23 was patched to version 23.2, there was a patch note that said improved CA progression rates for players in inactive leagues. I'm not exactly sure what the devs meant by improved CA progression. Does it mean that an improvement was made in the game engine, like to the way the players developed in inactive leagues? Or does it mean that players in inactive leagues improve at a faster rate? I'm not entirely sure what the devs meant in the patch note, but according to the results that I've got here, it is clear that players grow at the fastest rate in FM23 when they're playing in an inactive league. That's the conclusion that I have to make based on the findings that I have. So these findings lead to another important implication regarding loans in the game. So when it comes to finding a club to loan out your youngsters, try to choose a club that's part of a league that's set as either inactive or view only in your save. And that will lead to the most amount of benefit for the player being loaned out. Alright guys, so today I've covered 10 different variables in FM23, and 8 out of 10, they do have an impact on player growth, but on the other hand, 2 out of 10, they do not have any impact on player growth in the game. So it's time to make a full summary of all my findings. Here we go. So point 1, 2, and 3 is regarding determination, ambition, and professionalism. And so these 3 variables all affect the rate of player growth in FM23. With professionalism, it's higher the better. So a player with 20 out of 20 professionalism is going to grow faster than a player with 10 out of 20 professionalism. With determination and ambition, however, 10 out of 20 is all you need. Determination and ambition higher than 10 out of 20 it will not lead to any additional benefit for player growth. 4. Natural fitness does not affect the rate of player growth in the game. Contrary to popular belief, an old player, past the age of 30, with high natural fitness will not decline any slower than another player with lower natural fitness rating. The only exception could be goalkeepers past the age of 38, but like I said earlier, in Football Manager, I don't think anyone cares about players past the age as old as 38. So yeah, there's that. 5. The quality of the coaching staff does affect the rate of player growth. 6. The quality of the training facilities does affect the rate of player growth. 7. Training intensity does affect player growth for outfield players, but not really for goalkeepers. 8. League reputation does affect the rate of player growth. So when loaning out a youngster, try to find a club for your player that's part of a league with a high reputation. 9. A player who's being loaned out grows at the same rate as a player who's playing for a parent club, all other factors being equal. 10. Whether a league is set as active, view only, or inactive does matter. A player grows at the fastest rate when playing in an inactive league, followed by a league that's set as view only. So when loaning out one of your players, try to choose a club that's part of a league that's set as either inactive or view only. Okay people, that's it. I hope I've given you a few tips today that you find useful and that you can take away and start using in your own Football Manager saves. Guys, it's been a fantastic year for this channel in 2022. Obviously the channel's grown a lot in the past few months, all thanks to your kind and generous support. So keep those likes and comments coming. Hope you all have a wonderful holidays, and yeah, I'll see you guys all next time. Alright, cheers.